Welcome back to another explainer. All right, so if you're a network administrator, you already know the deal. Logging is an absolute necessity, right? I mean, it's the bedrock of your network security, your troubleshooting, your compliance, the whole shebang. But what if I told you that this exact tool, the very one keeping your network safe, could literally be destroying your physical hardware right now if it's misconfigured? Seriously. In today's explainer, we're going to look closely at how optimizing your FortiGate logging strategies isn't just about managing your data. It is quite literally about hardware survival.
So let's pose a high-stakes scenario. Could your firewall's hard drive actually fail this week simply because it is writing too many logs? Well, the short answer is yes, absolutely. Basic local logging, if you leave it unmanaged or cranked up to the wrong severity levels, can act as a silent hardware killer. That constant, heavy disk writing drastically reduces the lifespan of your internal storage, and that leads to premature disk failure and some really major system performance degradation.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for this explainer. First up, we'll cover the hardware cost of logs. 2. The anatomy of FortiGate logs. 3. Offloading to remote storage. 4. Reliable log transmission. 5. Managing your log volume. And finally, 6. Viewing and searching those logs.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the hardware cost of logs.
Now, the official Fortinet documentation is actually incredibly clear on this point. It states, and I quote, "Restrict logging to notification logs or higher to preserve hardware." You see, every single log entry has a severity level. It ranges from level 0, which is an absolute emergency, all the way down to level 6, which is just information. And here's the kicker. If you configure your device to log down at that information level, you're telling it to record every single general system event. That generates a massive, non-stop volume of data. And that sheer amount of constant disk writing, that's exactly what thrashes your drive and causes premature failure.
So the crucial takeaway here is really understanding the difference between local and remote storage. Think of local disk logging kind of like trying to store every single piece of company paperwork inside a tiny little broom closet. It's going to burst the storage room instantly, right? It slows down your daily work, and by default, FortiOS will just start aggressively deleting your logs after 7 days just to survive. Plus, there's a massive hardware conflict you need to know about. If your FortiGate only has a single local hard disk, you cannot use disk logging and WAN optimization at the same time. You literally have to choose between keeping logs and having decent network speed. That is, unless you offload to remote storage, which preserves your hardware and actually gives you long-term archiving.
And if you look right here in the log settings menu, where local disk logging actually lives, the documentation explicitly warns that performance may be impacted under heavy strain. It's right there in the UI, folks. Enabling disk logging forces the internal database to work overtime, which is exactly why we need to completely rethink our strategy here. Moving right along to part 2, anatomy of FortiGate logs. So, FortiGate breaks its logs down into 3 primary categories. First, you've got traffic logs, which record the actual flow of data, like HTTP requests. Second, event logs. These track your system operations, so think admin logins, VPN connections, things like that. And third, security logs, which record malicious events based on your security profiles, stuff your antivirus or web filter catches. Now, here is a vital tip for you admins out there. Security logs will actually remain completely hidden in your FortiGate GUI if no relevant entries have been generated yet. I've seen people panic over this, but if you don't see the menu, it just means you haven't logged a security event yet. No news is good news. Now, structurally, every single log message is divided into 2 distinct parts, a header and a body. The header is standard across the board. It always contains the date, the severity level, and the log type. But the body, that changes dynamically based on the specific event. It contains vital fields like the policy ID, which tells you exactly which firewall rule triggered the action, and the message field, which explains the precise reason why an action, like a block, actually happened. Okay, part 3, offloading to remote storage. Let's get these logs off our local disks. You have quite a few excellent external logging options, and it really just depends on the size of your network. For smaller networks on a tight budget, FortiCloud is fantastic. It gives you 7 days of retention totally for free, and you can easily upgrade to a full year with a paid tier. For larger, more complex environments, you can push logs out to a standard syslog server, integrate with FortiCM for some really advanced risk management, or use dedicated Fortinet hardware like FortiAnalyzer or FortiManager. Those guys have massive daily log volume limits built specifically for heavy lifting. Now, if you are using FortiAnalyzer, you really need to understand its 2 distinct operating modes. On one hand, we have Analyzer mode. This is the smart, central aggregator that receives your logs, processes them, and lets you generate really robust security reports.
On the other hand, we have collector mode. In collector mode, the device simply gathers logs from multiple FortiGates and just forwards them upstream. It's essentially just an archiving node, meaning it offers absolutely zero event management or reporting capabilities on its own. Which brings us to Section 4, reliable log transmission. Because offloading is useless if you lose the data in transit, right? By default, FortiGate sends logs using UDP. Now, UDP is fast, sure, but it's a fire and forget protocol. It literally doesn't check if the log ever arrived at its destination. Reliable logging is a critical setting that changes this transport delivery method from UDP over to TCP. TCP provides reliable data transfer. It guarantees data integrity and ensures that packets arrive in the exact order they were sent. Plus, turning on reliable logging allows you to encrypt the communications using SSL-secured OFTP, keeping your log data completely safe across unsecured networks.
So how does this actually work under the hood? Well, in FortiOS 7.2 and later, this TCP transmission follows a really brilliant step-by-step handshake. First, the FortiGate holds its newly generated logs in a confirm queue. It tracks every single log delivery using a sequence number. Then, periodically, the firewall queries the FortiAnalyzer, basically asking, hey, what was the highest sequence number you successfully received? Once the analyzer responds with that number, the FortiGate safely clears all those acknowledged logs from its queue. It keeps the data perfectly synced with zero dropped logs. It's pretty slick.
All right, Section 5, managing your log volume. Let's be real. As an admin, you simply cannot review every single entry. You'll lose your mind. You have to optimize your scope. You should be prioritizing your analysis based on a few key factors: specific traffic characteristics, explicitly flagged security events, and unexpected frequency or timing compared to your normal baseline network behavior. Like massive traffic spikes at 2 a.m. And here is a huge tip to reduce the noise. Disable logging entirely on highly isolated test networks or restricted guest segments where that level of granular tracking just isn't necessary. Because honestly, too much useless data is just as bad as too little.
To manage that volume at the system level, administrators can set up global log roll and automatic deletion policies right in the system settings. You can tell the system, for example, to delete logs older than 365 days. But, and this is a major warning here, FortiAnalyzer will aggressively delete old archives if these thresholds aren't configured carefully. If your global automatic deletion policy triggers before your specific device disk utilization limits do, it will just start deleting those archives regardless of what you actually intended. You absolutely must balance these thresholds.
And finally, Section 6, viewing and searching logs.
When you navigate to the Log and Report menu in the GUI, everything is formatted into these really clean, readable tables. If you want deep, granular details on a specific entry, you just double-click the log row. But if you're actively hunting down a specific threat, you can simply right-click directly on any column data point, like a target IP or a blocked category, and boom, it applies a lightning-fast filter to the entire table instantly.
And I want to leave you with a highly practical pro tip that is a massive time saver. You don't even have to start your search in the log menu. You can go straight to your firewall policy list, right-click any specific policy, and just select Show Matching Logs. The system will instantly redirect you and automatically filter the log table using that exact policy's unique identifier. It literally lets you jump instantly from a firewall rule right directly to the activity that rule generated. Which brings us to the end of today's explainer. And I want to leave you with this provocative final thought. Are your current logging settings actually protecting your network, or are they slowly destroying your hardware? I highly encourage you to log into your FortiGate today, audit your local storage settings, and double-check those severity levels based on everything we just talked about. Yes, protect your network data, but please, protect your hard disks too. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.